Welcome to the Red Diamond Wargame Podcast. I am your host, Major Kurt Locker Honig, and joining me today is Colonel Tim Barrick, United States Marine Corps retired, also called Scarab6. Tim Barrick is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, the U.S. Naval War College, the Marine Corps War College, and American Military University. Has commanded the 1st Tank Battalion, the Marine Corps Tactics and Operations Group, and director of the Wargaming Division in the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. He was the primary designer of the operational wargame system. Tim currently serves as the Wargaming Director for Marine Corps University, and it is an absolute privilege to have him as a guest today. Thank you for joining me today, sir.
Hey, it's great, Kurt, to be here. Thanks for what you're doing with this podcast. Really happy to be here chatting with you today.
Please note that all opinions expressed are entirely those of the participants and do not reflect the United States Marine Corps, their units, or any other organizations of which they are a part. And Tim, I'd love it if you'd be able to kick us off. If there's any part of your background on which you'd like to elaborate or focus, and how you came into wargaming, we'd like to hear about it.
Yeah, and I'm just going to piggyback on what you just said and emphasizing that I am in a furlough status at the moment, so I am entirely unofficial. And because of that, I'm going to feel somewhat liberated in my comments to just feel free to roam and get, my opinions and thoughts. And so I am definitely not here in an official capacity representing the university. I am here as my own individual and excited to talk about wargaming. I will talk about, obviously, some of the direction and vision of what myself and the team and the general at Marine Corps University are trying to do with wargaming, but I'll also dive into on the personal front. And so to jump in on, to answer your question, so a little bit about my background in wargaming. So I definitely want to kind of give a shout out to my brother, Nate. He's my older brother. We actually have a fantastic opportunity in both of our current jobs with the Marine Corps, where we cross paths from a wargaming standpoint quite a bit and are able to both participate in wargaming. But we started wargaming when we were kids. One of my youngest memories is playing the game Victory in the Pacific that first came out in 1978, and I believe that my brother and I played it when it first came out, that he bought the game and we learned it. And so when I was 8 years old, was playing Victory in the Pacific. And I can remember playing for some that are listening may know the game Third Reich by Avalon Hill. From that time, we were playing it in second, third grade, playing Third Reich. And then we went on to Wooden Ships and Iron Men, Squad Leader. Those were some of our staple war games as kids, and in the teenage years played those extensively, wore out the boxes, frankly, on those games. So that's really where my love of wargaming started, was in wargaming with my brother when we were growing up. Then when I went in the Marine Corps, gaming in the Marine Corps sense of tactical decision games, particularly as those gained a lot of traction in the 1990s. And then on a personal front, I continue to do some hobby gaming, but not really nearly as much as I did when I was growing up. And then in my time at the Marine Corps Tactics and Operations Group, really got into running battle staff training events. And for the course there, the TMIC course at the time for the operations tactics instructors that we were training, getting into a lot of scenarios that forced decision making and planning in the context of kind of more of a battle staff training kind of environment, and using simulation driven exercises. Did a lot of that then. And then really came back into the wargaming world, I would say, in 2018, when I got assigned to the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab to be the wargaming director. And that was about the time that the force design really started kicking off, doing expeditionary advanced-based operations, looking at the future of hypothetical conflict in the Western Pacific and what that might look like for the Marine Corps, and what the force design risks and opportunities and challenges would be, and learning on a campaign of learning with wargaming. That really kind of jumped me into the professional wargaming world that I did for 3 years, then retired. And then really the last 4 years at the university, at Marine Corps University, doing military education focused wargaming, which I really love because that opens up the whole span of history for wargaming, right? Because when you're looking at force design for the Marine Corps, you're really anchored in the present and the future from a scenario standpoint. But when you start getting into military education, you know, yes, you need to war game the present and the future, and many of our scenarios at Marine Corps University are centered on the present day and the future. But we also jump into historical wargaming because teaching the decisions that just on basic principles of war, on risk versus opportunity, on weighting main efforts, on how you resource different efforts, how you read a problem and try to decipher, hey, what are the key elements here? What is the key to victory? I mean, those are those basic cognitive decision frameworks that you need to apply to problem solve. And you can do that through historical games. And then the other great aspect of the historical gaming is that you do have the history that you can then compare it to, right? You can say, well, here were the decisions of the historical commanders and what they did, what they thought was important, why they did it, what contributed to the outcome. And then when you war game that, you may have a similar experience or you may find something different, but you're going to learn from that and then developing and cultivating those mental models. So I find that I particularly enjoy and have a passion for the military education focused wargaming because you can really exploit the full span of war games that are out there from the history through the present. And then it's really centered on the decision making of the players and what goes into those decisions. So I really enjoy that about the current job and in teaching is really developing the decision making of the students, right? And helping them be better decision makers and therefore better planners and better commanders as a result of that.
And absolutely, and it's absolutely a critical role in the military and especially coming out of Marine Corps University. So your primary audience in that role is going to be the just the basic schoolhouses. So we have Expeditionary Warfare School, you have the Commandant Staff College, the Marine Corps War College, right, and then the School of Advanced Warfighting. So each of those has their own set of curriculum. Are you able to kind of describe some of the differences in the wargaming for each of those? Is there an emphasis on historical for some, for future conflict in others, strategic down to tactical for each of the different schoolhouses?
Yeah, but first let me just add two more schools that are really important to the discussion too. What you described are the core resident schools, right? But then we have the College of Enlisted Military Education, CME, okay, and we have the College of Distance Education and Training, which does include, the majority of those that you listed have distance education programs. And there's similar programs and there's differences in the war games. The main effort that we currently have most of our time and effort going into are those resident programs that you listed. It is quite the range, right? I mean, when you compare Expeditionary Warfare School with the Marine Corps War College, just for example. So EWS with the Captain's Course, all their scenarios really center on the Infantry Battalion and the Marine Expeditionary Unit, right? So a 05 level command, 06 level command, very tactical in the scenarios and in the detail that they get into, right? The student plans, their decisions are very detailed at the tactical level, getting into, the scheduling of aircraft, getting into ordnance loadouts on those aircraft, getting into artillery fire plans, right? They get pretty specific, as they should, for a captain's course and battalion level. So very tactical, and what I also find very challenging and both challenging and stimulating because they keep me on my toes is they're experts in their field, right? So when you deal with a captain student, they're fresh. Usually they're coming in fresh out of being in the operating forces. They're current on their small unit tactics for their MOS, right? And they want to bring all that into a game, and so you're forced to deal with some hard numbers and facts about those weapon systems, and games tend to abstract things, and so it becomes challenging to adjudicate when you're trying to factor in all those factors that they want to bring in, because those are the real planning factors. But bottom line, they're very tactical. They're usually dealing on a 1 to 50,000 map, right? And that's the kind of scenario that you're running at Expeditionary Warfare School. Now you jump up to the Marine Corps War College, where they're dealing at particularly the combatant command level, at the global, like national command authority, like what is our national security strategy in a conflict. There are scenarios where a game turn at EWS covers 1 hour of real time. Usually when we're fighting that, it's in 1 hour increments of what you're representing as real time fight. At the Marine Corps War College, occasionally we're running games at the 1 day per turn, but usually we're at either the 2 weeks per turn, a month per turn, and in some cases even a year that we're spanning. Like if we're running a competition game, we will run a turn as a year, and we'll do like 6 years of competition, strategic competition, right, between great powers. And so you're dealing at a strategic level of scenario and the problem sets, and then the factors going into it are across the dime, the diplomatic, information, military, economic factors. You're trying to incorporate all of that into the outcome. So we jump from, we're in a battalion fight with the captains at EWS to, a couple weeks later, we may be in a competition game that's spanning a year at the global level with the Marine Corps War College students, with being lieutenant colonels and lieutenant colonels and colonels. And then you've got Command and Staff College and SAW that tend to be in the middle range, where it's more 2-3 star level command. They start a little bit at the division level, but then they jump rapidly up to Marine Expeditionary Force, Corps 3-star command, and then to the Joint Task Force, right, is really, I think, the key focus of most of particularly Command and Staff College at the JTF level, and then SAW generally at the MEF level, but then also jumping to JTF level. So it kind of hits that operational level war. So we truly, when you look at the schools, I know that sometimes people debate whether there's an operational level of war. I personally think there's a lot of value in the framing of an operational level of war. And so we get tactical level at EWS. We get tactical level, but getting into operational level at Command and Staff College, and SAW, depending on really the time span we're trying to cover, is what I would define as, are you trying to play through a campaign, or are we really just fighting a battle? And then we definitely get into the strategic level with the Marine Corps War College. So it's quite a spectrum of games that we're challenged with.
And naturally, you're not going at this by yourself or just with your team. You're working shoulder to shoulder with the faculty for each of those resident courses. How has that experience normally gone? Are all those guys fully versed in the different games and scenarios that you develop? Do they give you a framework that you can then modify a game so it achieves their learning objectives? Or how collaborative is that experience?
So it's very collaborative, and it's also quite wide-ranging in the experience, because again, even the faculty dynamics are very different across the schools. I'll give a shout out here to both Dr. Jim Lacey and Dr. Ben Jensen and Dr. Matt Jones, who is for the last few years has been teaching at the Marine Corps War College with Dr. Lacey. So, before I came to Marine Corps University in 2021 as the first full-time wargaming position. Before that, there was nobody full-time wargaming as their sole duty. And it was on the individual initiative of guys like Dr. Ben Jensen and Dr. Jim Lacey that were passionate about, they are passionate about wargaming. And they carried on their shoulders integrating wargaming into their courses where they had the influence to do so. And they did fantastic jobs with it. Really, for years, they've been doing that. And not just them, there's other faculty in the university, but those two, I would say, are the standouts for what they've been doing from a wargaming standpoint. And, so they've done a fabulous job, and they're still there. They're still passionate about wargaming. And so this is a case when I'm dealing with like a Dr. Jensen or a Dr. Jim Lacey or Dr. Matt Jones. It's, hey, what do you want to do, right? What are you trying to accomplish? And then let me help you, right? So I have to do very little education or training with them. It's really more about they have a vision already. They know what they want to do, and it's really about me helping them out, and or my team, right? And which, by the way, we've grown as a team in the Krulak Center now from a wargaming standpoint. A year ago, it was just two of us. It was myself and Captain Nate Tidwell, who is our modeling and simulation officer. That was a year ago. We've now got a new contract vehicle in place, and we've hired a new team. And so we're now at 6 contractors and 3 governments. So we're now at 9 total, which is fantastic. So we've more than quadrupled in size, which gives us a lot more capacity. So we're able to do more now in supporting the schools. But each school's kind of been different, right? And with McWar, it's really been about supporting and enabling what those faculty members, particularly Dr. Jones and Dr. Lacey, what they want to accomplish. And a lot of theirs is historical games as they look at strategy and grand strategy over the years. And then they've been integrating the operational war game system and the digital course of action tool into their games as well. With SAW, Todd Simmons is there now, retired colonel, and he's doing a lot of the leading of their wargame efforts. He's got a fantastic vision, and he's got a background in wargaming as well, in hobby wargaming. He's a big squad leader fanatic, which is fantastic, and so he has a vision already of what he wants to accomplish with wargaming in the course, and he's partnered up with Dr. Ben Jensen, and so they've got some great ideas and really have a lot of initiative in what they want to accomplish. And so again, it's me enabling and supporting their particular vision. Now getting to Command Staff College and EWS, the dynamic's a little bit different. And, this is where I would say it's more difficult to implement a really effective war game program at these schools because they're so big, right? So when we're running a game at SAW or at the Marine Corps War College, the student body is around 30. In fact, this year I think SAW is at 26. McWar has grown. I believe they're at 36 now. So, but that's a very manageable population that if you're running a game there, we can basically split them up, and with 2 facilitators, we can pretty much do it, right? You can't do that at Command and Staff College and at EWS when you're dealing with over 200 students across 16 conference groups. You can't as one person or as 2 people do it. It has to be by, with, and through the faculty to run a game. And so I think that when we try to implement a gaming program at those 2 schools, the emphasis has to be on faculty development and on the faculty championing and leading the students through the game. And this is really, I think, our biggest challenge has been getting the faculty to a level of confidence and proficiency with different war game tools to where they can do it on their own. And so we end up, for a number of the games, we'll scrape together a number of the experienced facilitators across the university, and we'll kind of bring them all in to surge on an event with like Command and Staff College to cover down. But that's not the long-term vision. Where we really need to get to is that the faculty in those schools are confident and capable in the wargaming methodologies to integrate it in and run their students through it. And that's just a work in progress right now. I mean, there's good people doing some great initiatives in both EWS and Command and Staff College, but I would say we're still on that like uphill road of teaching different game methodologies, and also in trying to land at what is the right method and venue, right? Matching a learning outcome that they're trying to achieve with here's the game methodology, and then here's the right construct to get after it. Okay. we've tried games where it's literally like a command and staff college, the whole student body split in one JTF, one half is one JTF, and another half is a JTF, and we're literally running a massive JTF to JTF level game. We've done those. We've also done it where like one seminar is running a game and you're running 16 games at once, right? I personally prefer as a learning methodology the smaller size game because you're able to more effectively kind of set up the decision making environment for the players. Like if you're going to do a learning assessment and say, okay, what did this student learn through this war game? If you're able to look across the student body and say, well, we had 16 games going and these guys in this conference group were making the same kinds of decisions as these ones, as these ones in this group, and they had common kind of decision frameworks, you can compare and contrast and really get a good idea of the learning, the decisions that were made. But when the whole student body is like in two JTFs and you have part of them are in the command element, some of them are in the land component, some are in the air component, their experiences in the game are entirely different, right?
Absolutely.
There's no way to effectively say that, hey, we put these 200 plus students through this war game and they all learned X. There's no way to do that, right? You're setting up this big experiment and they're all going through it and they're all getting an experience, but their experiences are very individualized and very different. And therefore, I'm not the biggest fan of that kind of methodology. I'd much prefer to say, look, we're after the decision making in this framework and we're pooling the students into a team or into staff roles or command roles in this environment to make those decisions. And we're trying to push it down as low as we can. Some of the best games, I think, are 1v1, right? Where we are getting them all they're all challenged with the same problem. They're challenged with the same decisions. And now you can really get a good discussion going in evaluation when everybody had the same problem. And it's like, well, you chose to do this. Well, why did you do that? And you had the same problem and you chose to do something differently. Why did you do it differently, right? And I know you've experienced this in the Fight Club with the teams, right? This is what I love about the team approach in our Fight Club events like Warplan. When you have 4 players on a team and we're all faced with the same problem, but we're individually solving it, but we can talk amongst the team. And I find even as much as I've played Warplan, like I'm playing with the team now, got Eric Walters, Lan, Chris Nelson, and Catherine Schaefer from the Krulek Center team. We're all on the same team. Even this year, I've played the breakout scenario multiple times, and I'm still learning things because they're approaching it differently. And they are like, hey, I'm doing this. And I'm like, oh, you know what? In all my times playing it, I've never looked at it that way or never tried that, right? And that's the value when you're all facing the same kind of problem and you can then compare and contrast your decision process and your tactics. I just find it to be very effective. And that's one of the things I love about our Fight Club program as a supplement to the educational experience the students are getting with the schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And all that makes a lot of sense. And I'd love to talk more about the Fight Club program, but you did mention the College of Distance of Education and Training, of which I am a recent graduate. And then also, and forgive me, I'm not familiar with the enlisted distance component. Did you want to elaborate any more on any wargaming efforts going on in those two organizations, or is that the next goalpost down the line?
So I can talk about that. I would definitely say it's kind of a next goalpost, but there's been good work done by a lot in both of those schools over the years. I feel a little bit bad in that I don't feel like I've enabled them sufficiently, but that's purely a resourcing and bandwidth constraint that hopefully we're getting better at. So I'll talk the enlisted gaming first. So there's a number of initiatives that have been going on over the years, but the one that I think has gained the most traction is Littoral Commander in a tabletop game. We purchased over 100 copies of the game and distributed out to all the staff academies, and made it available to them, and they wanted to dive into it from a MAGTF level and joint level capabilities standpoint. And so over the last few years, that I believe has met varying degrees of success across those organizations. Again, the key here is faculty development, faculty confidence with the game. It is a great game, and it's relatively easy to learn, but it also has complexities that make it challenging to implement at a mass level like that. We have been investing in a digitization of Littoral Commander that is in our Wargaming cloud, and we actually just in the next few weeks, we should be having a new version in the cloud that is going to dramatically improve the user interface, but we still need to go through a period of beta testing with it. But I'm hoping that this digital version of the game will make it more accessible so that those schools that want to integrate Littoral Commander in as a scenario wargame framework will be able to use it from a digital standpoint and help them out. And then this kind of is a jumping off point for CDAT, for the College of Distance Education Training. So their Expeditionary Warfare School faculty have been working on a Caribbean scenario adaptation of Littoral Commander. And we are getting that scenario put into our Wargaming cloud as well. And so that is an initiative that Ty Wallace with the CDAT team has been championing, and we're hoping to see that become operational with the CDAT EWS program over this next year, as they're able to leverage both a tabletop format and a digital format with our Wargaming cloud to do that. The other game that's been in the works for the Command and Staff College portion of CDAT is a historical adaptation of the operational wargame system that is Operation Westerüberung, which is the German invasion of Norway in 1940.
Oh, yep.
So they've done a historical variant of the operational wargame system. So really, the key thing that they pull in is the dice mechanic of promotion, demotion, and kind of simplifying the combat system through the dice mechanic. And it's a joint operation, right? So it's got an air component, land component, you got the naval component, and their intent is to showcase this Norway case study in a war game. It also serves as a basic introduction to wargaming, and then that becomes a jumping off point to then going into contemporary day operations with the operational wargame system, also with a Norway scenario, right? So they have a really nice theme that builds there, where they're progressing in wargaming. They're progressing from a historical case study of the High North with Scandinavia, particularly Norway, looking at World War II, and then jumping into present day joint operations challenges using the more complex all domain operations of today using OWS. So that's kind of the CDET area. I should mention one more aspect with CME, and that goes to the company commander game. So I think there's huge opportunity in the Marine Corps with our company commander game that we have in the Wargaming Cloud, because the majority of the Marine Corps is at the company and below level, right?
That's right.
I mean, that's where the preponderance of decision making, of tactics is. You know, we say every Marine's a rifleman, but okay, let's talk the tactics at the squad, platoon, company level. And so even though a lot of our PME courses are at a higher level of scenario and decision making, you know, when we talk about the preponderance of the Marine Corps, it's corporals, sergeants, lieutenants, right? That's the most of the target population that we really want to draw into wargaming in order to set the stage for the future, right? In cultivating leaders and cultivating a culture of wargaming, you have to start at the entry level when they come in, right? And then build that over the years. And having a game like Company Commander that is super easy to play, and it's engaging from a contemporary tactics. You can launch loitering munitions, and you're wrestling with loitering munition tactics. And it's not a perfect game by any stretch, but it's the best we have right now. And and on that subject matter of company level tactics, and frankly, now as you're seeing with the scenarios in the top tactics tournament, really jumping up to the battalion level and maybe even stretching it to the brigade level. These are some large scenarios that we're dealing with
They
now.
are. They are.
And I think it's a great opportunity for the players to wrestle with the basic tactical fundamentals that you have to wrestle with in today's tactical fight. You cannot ignore the air domain. You have to be very sensitive to the air domain. You have to be thinking about combined arms from an air defense counter drone. And I think as we continue to improve that game tool, we will continue to make that decision environment a better replication of the key factors that people need to be learning about that fight. So I think that what we're starting to see is some of the enlisted schools are starting to use Company Commander as a tool. We just got a request last week for one of the CME schools where their faculty are trying to get accounts so they can enable a game with their students in Company Commander to wrestle with those small unit tactics. So I think there's going to be there's a world of potential as we look at that game and what it can do, particularly for the small unit tactics, decision making, continuing education, as we call it, and supporting the Fleet Marine Force with game capabilities that they can use in their current position. So this really, from a mission mandate standpoint, goes well beyond, the Marine Corps University, resident program, distance education program, and is I think, an important piece to what we are doing at the Brute Krulak Center is developing and providing war game tools that can be used across the Marine Corps, right? Particularly from a tactics sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And the recurring theme from these first initial episodes is that it was the Top Tactics 24 Mar Admin that has actually ignited a great deal of interest from at least those of us that participated in the Commandant's Cup this previous year. So it's working, and the game is Company Commander Modern, that is leading the Top Tactics tournament. So, starting with Top Tactics 24, this was the first time Marine Corps University Fight Club kicked out a wargaming tournament. Can you give us a little bit of background on the genesis and how that came about?
Yeah, let me back up to the Wargaming Cloud capability
Sure.
first, and then I'll jump into Top Tactics. It's really kind of the vision of the cloud is important to the conversation. So, as jumping all the way back to General Berger when he took over as commandant, right? His commandant's planning guidance had wargaming sewn throughout it. I forget the number of times. If you do a word count, it's something like 26 or 36 times that wargaming pops up in his commandant's planning guidance. That was 2019. So one of the things that he also emphasized was wargaming being integrated into PME. And so at that time, I was at the Warfighting Lab and started having conversations with the leadership at Marine Corps University where they're like, hey, we need to revamp our wargaming and help us out. And so we end up having conversations about, okay, how do you really get wargaming off the ground? And one of the ideas that we discussed was having a wargaming cloud that allows you to do wargaming outside of the classroom, right? Because if you don't have a digital capability, then your limitation is wargaming in person in class, right? And that limits the amount of decisions that you can challenge your students with making, right? And the number of problems that they are wrestling with. With a digital capability, such as the Wargaming Cloud, you now can play games in a distributed manner. You can assign them as homework. You can create competitions and tournaments, right, where they're now fighting, and you're leveraging the time as faculty wrestle with curriculum and deciding how much time they're allocating to each learning modality. How much time are you reading? How much time are you writing? How much time are you in class doing lecture? How much time are you wargaming, right? Well, now you open up the opportunity to wargame both in the classroom and you can wargame outside the classroom. So that was kind of part of the vision, and the tournament piece was also part of the vision. But that was the original vision behind the cloud. So Marine Corps University started working on it, and then I retired from the warfighting lab and came over to the university in the fall of 21. At that time, the Wargaming Cloud was just starting to come together, and we reached initial operating capability in September of 2022. About a year after I got on there, we started in 22, and then we started running some internal wargame tournaments at the university using some of the different capabilities in the cloud. And then we started to open it up more broadly, and we started working on developing the games, right? So wrestling, trying to create a portfolio of games that allow you the opportunity to game at the tactical level, the operational level, and the strategic level. And wargaming in a historical context and in a contemporary context. So Company Commander became our tool solution for a modern tactical game at the company level. We also looked at Flashpoint campaigns and invested in modifying some of its amphibious warfare capabilities to give us kind of a battalion to MEU level game in contemporary environment. And then around the same time, the operational wargame system in tabletop form caught the attention of Indo-PACOM, and they did an investment that ended up digitizing the operational wargame system, and they called it the Digital Course of Action tool. That has now reached a fully functional prototype, DigiCat as we call it, and so we now have a portfolio that's been developed over the last few years of tactical through high operational games that cover the contemporary time frame, and then leveraging the commercial market with their commercial games like Warplan, Strategic Command, Flashpoint campaigns, Command Modern Operations, the Command Professional Edition game. I mean, we have a whole portfolio of games now from historical to modern, and we've been putting those in the cloud, and then we've been running tournaments. So over the last few years, what's been really key is the learning process of how to run tournaments, how to manage the cloud, how to keep it patched and updated. And we still have a lot to learn, right? I mean, it's far from perfect. We get technical glitches. We have bugs in the game that we identify. We're developing scenarios at a rate where it's literally just-in-time scenario delivery. Like the current Top Tactics tournament, those scenarios dropped like the week before we started the round into the cloud. And that is not the way to do business. Really, it's not. But I'm willing to be high risk here because we're trying to lean into this and be at the cutting edge and to deliver like, hey, this is the latest and greatest we can deliver. And I'm willing to accept risk that we might hit some glitches in the tournament or in the scenario. And we have some, right? There were some glitches with the first round of Top Tactics where, if you drop down right on one of the objective flags with your air assault, it wasn't counting. You had to move off and move back on. Well, that shouldn't be that way, right? So we have fixed that, but we didn't actually identify that until we're in the tournament. Kate, that's not ideal. And if we were running for running the Olympics, people would not accept that kind of risk, right? They would say, look, it has to be proven. But let's face it, we're not there. Our goal is to get people to fight and make decisions in the context of this tournament. And if we hit some glitches along the way, I'm willing to accept that risk. So that means that we're able to be very aggressive in saying, look, I want this scenario and get the team to put it together and deliver it. And it is what it is. And thankfully, we have a fantastic team that I think generally does a really good job. And I think especially with these latest Taiwan scenarios that we've done for Top Tactics, they're fantastic. I mean, I'm really impressed with what the team has put together, and I give them full credit for that. We simply put the requirement out there, hey, this is basically what we want. You build it and deliver it, and they did it, and I think they hit the ball out of the park, right? And we'll continue to improve. That's the thing, is we're going to continue to improve these. But let me jump back, though, to a key point that I wanted to make in this campaign of learning with this Wargaming Cloud capability. one of the key things that I did not fully appreciate until after we were running tournaments is an aspect of the tournaments that I call tournament psychology. And what that means from a learning standpoint, right? That when you are competing 1v1, you own your decisions. And when you're in a tournament where your points are going to be on a leaderboard, right? And you have reputational stakes on the line, it pressurizes your decision making. And when you do your turn and you hit submit, you can't buy it back, right? I mean,
Right.
You've made your decisions. So when you are thinking through and you're presented when that game comes up and you're looking at the situation, you have to have a mental process of war fighting where you are assessing the situation, deciding what's important, and deciding how aggressive or how conservative you want to play. What is your theory of victory? And what must you do? And you're making these risk calculus decisions on here's my mission, here's my risk to force. Do I want to send my Panzer division back into the rear area to cut off the logistics? And I know that I may lose him in the process, but I'm going to set the enemy back, right? And is the gain worth me sacrificing this force or potentially sacrificing this force for the gain of what it's going to do to the enemy, right? Or do I need to preserve that combat power and therefore I'm not going to push it into the rear area, but I'm going to keep it tight, right? These are fantastic decisions. And that individual has to decide, how aggressive am I going to play this? Do I want to be bold and aggressive and really, take this high risk maneuver in order for a better chance of winning? Or must I be more conservative here and take a more conservative approach? So you get insights into that kind of decision process that a person goes through in the tournament, and then it's pressurized because of the team environment. Because of the tournament environment and leaderboards, It's pressurized. And then the other thing that I've come to appreciate is that the team piece means that you face the risk, if you don't do well, of letting down the rest of the team if they're doing really well, right? So you get this peer pressure in such a way that it's pressurized, stressful decision making in a way that, like, if you and I were competing in a match that was outside of the tournament context, right? We would both be competitive and try to win, but it's different. It's different. It's different when it's in the tournament framework, and it is much more high stress and pressurized. I did not really appreciate that dynamic until I lived it, right? And especially living it as the war game director, where I may feel a little bit more pressure than others in terms of doing well, right? That I don't want to be at the bottom of the leaderboard and end up being, well, why are you the war game director if you're at the bottom of the leaderboard all the time, right? So that pressurizes that decision making. And I feel like when I play my turns, I focus, I remove distractions. I will do it either early in the morning or in the evening when I can completely focus, so I'm not distracted. I don't want to be making a rapid decision and then make a mistake, right? So I set myself up from a mental decision-making standpoint. I set the conditions to play my turn in a way that really helps me make the best decisions possible, right? So I bring my best game into it. And I just love that aspect of the tournament environment and the psychology, that I think it is underappreciated as a learning tool for decision making and the experience of decision making that this kind of tournament can bring to students, well, frankly, to anybody that participates, right? That you're getting an opportunity to make tactical decisions in a pressurized environment that are risk calculated decisions that are imprinting mental models on your mind when you're making those decisions. So all this comes back to, okay, we now created a capability. We have now learned by using the capability of, wow, this is actually pretty cool. We've created something that is a unique learning experience that we didn't fully appreciate its full potential until we started doing it, right? So that then led to, all right, two pathways here. One is, let's get the schools to now integrate this as not just an extracurricular activity, but can we get the schools to start doing this as an in-curriculum activity? In the meantime, we need to like get the word out, like get people to be able to experience this and showcase, hey, let's give people the opportunity. So we then started running a series of extracurricular war game tournaments to really improve our process and procedure in running these tournaments, and also to help just get the word out on, hey, here this is. Let's start using it. We've invested in this and built this capability, so let's use it. So that brings us all the way now to last fall. We had Company Commander, we had the Cloud, and we were also approached by the Marine Corps Association and Foundation, where they wanted to integrate into the modern day Marine venue a wargaming tournament. And so that led to the creation of the Commandant's Cup idea. And then we ended up on a road to the Commandant's Cup, and like, we got to get the player pool developed and built out. And so then that led to the MAR admin last fall announcing the Top Tactics competition. And we did that as a run-up event to really start building a player pool. And that was pretty successful in getting the word out and drew a lot of people in. And then that led to the Commandant's Cup this past year. And then this year we're building on it with a more robust road to the Cup. And we kicked off with the Top Tactics tournament that kicked off in early September. We did a MAR admin in August. We kind of made we had an admin challenge in getting that MAR admin out that ended up, our window of advertising was pretty short. We did get the MAR admin out, but it just wasn't out on the street long enough to draw the player pool in that we really wanted. So we ended up with a little over 200 competing in this year's Top Tactics. But that really wasn't kind of the numbers we were going for, and we're capable of doing so much more than that. I mean, we can get up to 1,000 players in a tournament. So we really wanted to stress the system more and give the opportunity to more people. So we actually are going to have another MAR admin hit the street any day now. I with the shutdown, I've kind of lost track of things. That's unfortunately kind of put us sideways a bit in some of our agenda. But sometime soon, there will be another round of Top Tactics kicking off as a parallel tournament, separate and distinct. So we're going to do another one with the same scenarios, but we've fixed some of the errors from the first one. So we're going to run the same scenarios. The difference is that this is going to be a pairs competition. So you will team up with teams of two, and then fight your way through these rounds. You still play individually, just like most of our tournaments are all individual gameplay, but you then combine the score of the two players into a team score. So the distinction between these two Top Tactic events is this first one was all individual competition. The second round that is going to be announced here shortly by MAR admin is going to be a pairs competition. And then that is the format, as you know, for the Commandant's Cup, is teams of two coming in. So that's going to help us start to, get teams to start to form and gel as we go into this round of Top Tactics. And then after that, we're going to be kicking off either in December or January a Flashpoint Campaigns tournament that will be the next big tournament on the road to the Cup. So we'll have basically these two Company Commander tournaments of Top Tactics. Then we're going to add to that Flashpoint Campaigns. And then from those tournaments, we will be able to look at the scores and be able to identify, okay, who's going to get the invite here to represent their units at the Commandant's Cup at Modern Day Marine at the end of April. So excited to have a third year of the Commandant's Cup, and that is basically our plan. And how to get there is this series of tournaments that are great exercises in decision making that we're trying to promote as a way to learn and develop those mental models of tactical decision making.
Absolutely. And so obviously a lot to unpack there. And first and foremost, it's absolutely working. I do think that you were hindered a little bit administratively in getting as many people enrolled, because I suspect another week you would have seen at least a doubling
I think
of the people. There was a lot of feedback of like, oh, I didn't even know. So in fact, half of my Warplan team just didn't have enough time to really like, I don't know about this top tactics stuff. I'll just wait. So I am confident that at least those two will hop on. Now, I might lose my original Commandant's Cup partner because he's going to be really busy. He's going to be hopping on orders in the near future. That's going to maybe take him away from the ability to actually execute all these things. He might be aboard ship, and his ability to log in consistently and be able to hit his turns on time might be pretty compromised. So we'll see if he's able to stick around. That's still a net growth, so I'm going to count that as a positive. It is good to note that these are going to be the tournaments that will qualify Marines for the Commandant's Cup. So last year, Top Tactics 24 did not have a component. It didn't contribute to the Commandant's Cup. There was a standalone tournament, preliminary tournament. That will not be the case this year. We're simply going to do these two Top Tactics tournaments and then a Flashpoint Campaigns Pro tournament. And from there, we will identify those individuals who will receive invites to Modern Day Marine.
Yes, that is fundamentally the approach. Now, I will say that there is a chance that if we end up with a pretty tight competition of players where it's like, hey, we've got this pool of 50 that all did really
Each
well,
can represent well.
then we may do a runoff tournament where we have them enter and compete in order to get a final standing. So some of that is to be determined, and we're still learning. I got to be honest, we're still learning, right? The dealing with the other is the challenge of our audience, right? The players here that, as you just mentioned, some of them are out on ship, and trying to give them multiple opportunities to compete and qualify, right? And then how many of those qualifiers do we end up putting in? So I got to be honest in that it's both art and science, because the other dynamic here is the representation of teams in the.
This could be my next question. Yeah.
Yes. So we wrestled with this last year of like how many slots do we make for allied teams? And let's just give a hypothetical. You've probably competed against some of our allied players in some of these top tactics tournaments. Some of them are fantastic, right? Yep. And when we first were coming up with the framework of the Commandant's Cup, and there was a large appetite to include from higher up the chain, right, to include allies and partners in the Commandant's Cup. And I warned them. I'm like, hey, be careful what you ask for, because they might sweep it. Like, they're fielding some very solid players, and if you're prepared to like hand off the Commandant's Cup to an allied player, which is fantastic for them, right? I mean, it's great that there's an opportunity to have allies compete, bring them into this tournament environment, and we may be handing the Commandant's Cup to them with the Marine teams losing, and we need to be prepared for that. So I personally actually advocated that we keep it a Marine-only one for that reason, that, hey, let's keep the Commandant's Cup an internal thing. But for strategic reasons, and I understand these, and I think they're laudable and they're great, and I'm fully supportive of them, obviously, is there was a decision made that, hey, we're going to include allies and partners. And so then, though, I decided from a tournament management, okay, we'll include them, but I want to guarantee that there's going to be some Marines in this, right? So we're going to have a certain number of team slots that will be Marine team slots, and then a certain number that these will be allied and partner, so that we will get, because let's look at it the other way. What if all the Marine teams beat all the allies and partners, right? And we had none of them that entered the top 12. Well, we still want to create this venue that showcases this allied camaraderie. So there is a dynamic, admittedly, of the Commandant's Cup team slotting or slating, right? The team slate for the Commandant's Cup, there's 12 slots, right? 12 team slots. We've decided that just from an admin and logistics, that 12 teams, 24 players, that's that's about what we can handle from a Commandant's Cup tournament management logistics. So I think we've landed on that's the right number. So 12 teams, who gets the invite, and then we start including like midshipmen and cadets and some of these academies that are competing. Right, we had a Polish Land Forces University had a phenomenal cadet
Yes.
team last year, right? And they were in the Final Four, and so that's, I mean, it's fantastic. And so, but how many of those? We don't necessarily want cadets and midshipmen to be all the teams. So there's an aspect of the Commandant's Cup that is by merit, by, hey, you must compete in the qualifier events, you must do well. And then as we look at the formula for, okay, Marine Corps University, hey, we're running the event. I got to be honest, we're going to field a student team, right? I mean, we're going to allow a student team the opportunity to compete the Commandant's Cup. So one of those teams will be from Marine Corps University. And then we end up with some allied and partner teams, and we end up with some Fleet Marine Force spots. And we get a lot that are based on who are the top teams. You can almost look at them like a division, these are conferences or divisions competing towards, you got to get to the top of your division to get the invite. So depending on what category of organization you fall into, that is going to decide whether you get the invite or not and how well you did.
Well, and that leads me to the next question that says, for guidance for completing teams was, we'll look at it at the first star division level as a way to identify partners. So my partner and I both fall under 4th Marine Division, and we had the MAR 4 pack information group, but really that was from both 1 MEF and 3 MEF. What kind of unit relationship are we hopeful for this year's Commandant's Cup?
Yeah, my preference is the first 1 star in the chain of command, but then you end up with like guys from, let's just say, the MEF staff, right, that may compete. So there's not a hard and fast rule here because some of it then gets to we have done free agent slating as well, where again we're just getting off the ground where we want people to play and compete. And so when I get players that are like, hey, sign me up, I want to play, but I don't have anybody around here that's playing, then I've been doing the free agent lineup to match people and do the pairing. And then you get some guys that know each other. So like last year's champions, right, were from 3rd MiG and 1st MiG, where they're on opposite sides of the Pacific. Their common general was MAR 4 pack, right, 3 stars. And I was like, okay, that works, right? But at some point you get to where the common general might be the commandant, right? Where and we did have some players that are like that, where it's like, hey, I'm from the supporting establishment, you're from the operating forces, and therefore our common headquarters or general is the commandant, right? And that's okay. That was our first year kind of doing that last year. I really want to get more to units fielding a team, and that framework of common geo is just really allows that to be a widespread definition of unit, right? To where hopefully somebody in 4th Marine Division can field a 2-person team, or 1st Marine Division, right? I got to be honest, we're not there yet, even across all the divisions, right? Where a division, we have some divisions that have not fielded teams, and we're working on it. I'm hoping that in the future we will be at the point where we don't have to do free agency, that there's enough of a demand signal that people are signing up, and they're signing up as a team and like, hey, this is my unit team, and they're in, and we end up with, we're pushing the max capacity on the cloud as we do these tournaments. That's what I'm hoping in the future. And, since you brought up Warplan, maybe we can just make this our last topic here. I got a couple thoughts as we wrap up this round 1 that we've been competing in, and those that may not be tracking, we've been running a Fight Club tournament in a commercial game called Warplan, which is basically focused on World War II operational scenarios. And the first round has been a scenario called Breakout, which is the breakout from Normandy. It really kind of showcases the Operation Cobra and the Filet Pocket, and ends up right around Operation Goodwood, kicking off late late July of 1944 and runs for a couple of months in the game time. And this is a team format, so there's 4 players on a team, and we try to make it by organization, and then we have 2 divisions. We have a PME division that is students and faculty from lots of schools. We have Command Staff College is our biggest team contributor. I think they have 7 teams this year that they entered. We have teams entered from Australian Defence College, from Canadian Forces College, from UK Defence Academy, from Norwegian Naval Academy, from Polish Land Forces University, from the Finnish National Defence University. So we've got a really good, and Belgian Defence College. So we've got lots of allied participation, which is fantastic. And then we've got some joint participation, not as much as I would hope for, but we do have some from a PME division. And then we have what we call the Forces Division. Last year we called it the Pro Division, but I thought that the term Pro may actually deter people from joining that. So we decided to call it the Forces Division to represent essentially everybody else, right? That's Fleet Marine Force units or Operational Army units. We have a couple of Army units that are in it. We have a couple of Belgian, operating force units that are competing. 1st Australian Division, 4th Canadian Division, 4th Marine Division, right? So we got really good kind of division competition going there, which I love and I think is fantastic. And so the first round has been competing in this breakout scenario. The individual scores are combined, so all 4 players' scores then get combined into a team score. And then we fight this through 3 rounds. The next round will kick off here in a couple weeks, which is Operation Avalanche. So Salerno, it covers the Southern Italy campaign, 1943. And then the round after that is going to be Operation Barbarossa. And covering really the span of the Eastern Front. So that's a heavy-duty scenario, and we've done tutorial scenarios working up to this that were Operation Sonnenblume in North Africa, which was really Rommel's first Africa Corps campaign. Then we had a tutorial scenario, which was Operation Crusader. And then we just fought Operation Cobra with Breakout, and then we progressed. So we're starting kind of at the small operational scenario to wrapping up with the big one. I really love the Warplan game system and the kinds of decisions that you have to make as a player. And it really spans from command and control, where your generals are assigned, to the logistics and your lines of communication, your supply truck allocation is resourcing different main efforts, your incorporation of combined arms with your air power. And then really one of the key aspects of the game is your management of your unit's readiness, right? Which in the game is effectiveness, which is a percentage. And every time you move and every time you fight, that percentage drops. So you are consuming readiness and combat potential for every action that you take, whether that is a move action or a combat action. So one of the key challenges as a player is you're managing your unit effectiveness across your entire force, and you're choosing when and where and how to expend that readiness. And sometimes you want to be very conservative, and you're like, nope, I'm just going to sit there. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to fight. I'm trying to build my readiness back up, right? And so I can do something later. And then sometimes you're like, nope, I'm going pedal to the floor. I'm going to go max expenditure of readiness because this is the decisive moment, time now, right? And you're like, okay, I'm going for it all right here, right? And knowing when to do that is the art of the decision making in the game, right? So you have to set conditions with all these kind of levers that you can pull, from command and control to logistics to how you arrange your forces in the battle space. And then it's about the throttle with each unit and how much you're going to expend those combat factors. And weaving all that together into that decision process in your mind is what the game is all about. And I think that does a really good job of modeling the kinds of decision making as a commander when you're thinking about, okay, in real life, if I had this situation, what is my core problem? Am I putting units on the defense? Am I going on the offense? Am I, going to build up combat power, or am I going to expend combat power? I mean, that's the kind of decision making that you're making in the game. It's not a perfect replication of warfare by any stretch. No game is, right? But it does a pretty good job. And then you get the team play aspect where you're talking about these tactics and having those discussions, which I think is fantastic. So that's this year's tournament. This is now, I want to say, the third year that we've run this fall Warplan tournament cycle. It might even be the fourth. I'd have to go back and look. But next year we'll do it again. And I think one of the things I'm thinking about for next year is I may not run free agency.
Okay.
I may require teams to sign up as a team. And I think that it's just because the admin load of trying to juggle
Yep.
and match make all these free agents has just been a challenge. And I'm hoping that now we have a large enough player pool where what we're seeing is people are coming back to compete again, and they're recruiting teammates,
Yes.
right? And then they play, and then they go out and they get new orders to a different unit, and then they now form a new team, right? And I think that we're seeing this kind of propagation of knowledge about the game and enthusiasm to play it just keeps spreading out. And I think we're at a point where we're at that tipping point where we may be able to just say, look, you go out, be a team captain, recruit your team, sign up, and it's you show up as your team. And that's a hard decision. We'll see where it goes, but I'm kind of putting that out right now as kind of a warning order, because a lot of your audience here are probably people who play in these tournaments. But be ready to form your team for next year and come back and compete. And we'll see what the tournament scenario lineup will be for next year. But love Warplan. I'd love to bring that into modern day Marine, the Commandant's Cup, but it's World War II, so
Sure.
that doesn't exactly resonate
fit the
with modern day Marine, right? So that it doesn't reach our kind of threshold for game selection for the Commandant's Cup because of that. But let's do another one of these, and we can talk about Joint Tactics Arena, and we can talk about whatever else you'd like to bring up.
No, absolutely. And I will say that the crossover between Top Tactics and Warplan is real. It's valuable. My opponent for Breakout is currently in first place in Top Tactics after round one. That makes me feel better because I thought I had a great plan that I developed after how poorly I did last year in Breakout. And he absolutely thrashed my plan. He had divisions in my rear that completely decimated my supply lines, and significant amount of learning occurred. And for that, I am greatly appreciative of getting the opportunity to play the game. I brought in 3 new players to Warplan, and I am very hopeful that through this, not just this episode, but through this podcast, we're able to get even more participants. We continue to grow Wargaming, and just like you are emphasizing, growing the decision-making in the Marine Corps, which is what we're both really trying to get after. So, Tim, really appreciate all the effort that we're doing. Hopefully that we're going to be able to live up to the expectations that you're putting out for us, and I look forward to talking to you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Kurt, for having me on. Appreciate what you're doing with the podcast. Thanks for the good work.